select, they will go ahead and have that opportunity as well. So without further ado, I will go ahead and turn it over to Philip, Director of Handwritten Wines, to tell us a little bit about their brand and their So-Yo house here in Yountville. Philip.
Hi, thank you so much, Whitney, and Tari, thank you so much for joining us. I think I'm going to keep this brief because this is more about listening and learning and kind of participating in a conversation that I think is just so crucial. And, you know, I've been heartened to hear this conversation start to really take hold in different corners around the country. As a business leader, you know, it's one thing to listen and learn, but you know, at the end of this, I think we all really want to be able to take action. And so I really look forward to Tari, to your presentation, and ultimately to being able to come up with actionable items to make our company grow and evolve. So Tari, thank you so much, and thank you, Whitney, and everyone at the Chamber for hosting this. This is amazing. So cheers.
Awesome. Thank you, Philip. Fantastic. You see their logo here up on the screen. So I know many of you know Handwritten Wines, but here in Yountville, and they just opened their new property here in downtown just this past January. So an absolutely fabulous brand and delicious wine. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Tari, and I'm going to read her bio and let her go ahead and fill in the gaps where bios never do it justice, but I'm going to go ahead and try. So great. So with over 10 years of improv and corporate facilitator experiences, Tari practices the basic tenets of improv throughout her professional career, with building cohesive teams, innovative ideation, and precision of execution. She has developed diversity and inclusion training for companies in multiple verticals with focus on unconscious bias. Tari is currently a member of the SKU Brand Accelerator and contractor, building several small brands. Formerly the Vice President of Marketing for American English Hair Care, and she's worked to build and market brands for Unilever and Southwest Media Group. In addition, Tari is the co-creator and facilitator of Cold Town's Unconscious Bias and Inclusivity Training, which utilizes improvisation and emotional intelligence strategies to create supportive environments where people feel free to be their full and whole selves, both at work and everywhere. Fantastic. Well, Tari, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and turn it over to you and take it away.
Alrighty. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It's great to see such a large group and so much interest. Feel free to ask questions and be as open as you'd like to be. I have done improv trainings and diversity trainings in lots of settings, from very uptight ones to very difficult ones. So there's nothing you can throw at me that I haven't answered before and that I haven't dealt with. So feel free to be open, happy and honest, and comfortable, because I love to do this work and I'm really interested in the fact that so many people are interested in learning more. Today we're really going to focus on creating a culture that supports diversity, because it's so important for people to feel comfortable, and happy people are better to work with. So you heard a little bit about me. I have been doing this work for the last 5 years or so. I started developing trainings to go into companies and help them uncover unconscious bias between working groups and to help teams work better. So why diversity and what is diversity? Diversity is a hot topic these days, we know, and it's important to understand that diversity does directly affect the workplace, and it really has increasing significance. Gone are the days when you didn't talk about it, or those things were hushed. We used to be in a place where the pendulum had swung into a place where people were quote unquote colorblind, or they didn't bring those things to work. And that place has simply sort of gone away. The pendulum has swung into a place where people now want to feel comfortable being their full selves at work and being happy to be their full selves at work and expressing who they are and all the things that make them diverse. So why diversity and why now? Well, it's been found, there's lots of great statistics, that diversity and celebrating diversity makes people feel more innovative and more creative. It improves the customer service experience. It definitely improves recruiting and employee retention. I actually started this work with a software company here. I'm based in Austin, Texas, and they felt like they had everything to make people happy, and they couldn't understand why at 3 years they were seeing a huge rate of attrition for women and people of color. And they were like, well, we're super laid back. We've got a keg in the office, and we've got a video game. So why doesn't everybody want to hang out? Well, when it came down to it, people very much kind of lived and worked in silos. And through uncovering trainings, and I actually have done trainings with that company, I've trained their entire executive team and everyone, I think it's about 400 people now. What we found is that people simply needed to be able to express their differences and feel like they were comfortable and confident in being who they were. And a lot of for that particular company, who can remain nameless since I'm talking about them, a lot of their issues were not so much with people of color, but really with the women in the office feeling like they were on equal footing. So diversity can definitely come in lots of different ways for diversifying the voices at the table. Also, diversity is a part of corporate responsibility, which we'll definitely talk about a little more. I have a great quote here that companies that prioritize diversity bring in 19% more revenue and report more improved financial performance, according to the Boston Consulting Group. So thanks to those guys for giving me numbers that helped my cause. Why now? Why does everybody suddenly care now? And it didn't seem like anybody really cared a couple of years ago. Selling trainings was a lot harder a few years ago than it is now. The difference is that honestly, without getting too political, which I'm not going to touch with a 10-foot pole, this is the only time I'll even say the word, I think maybe 1 or 2 more times. We're experiencing a great shift, and there's a paradigm shift happening in our culture now. A few years ago, brands weren't expected to have values around things like this, and if they did, they were seen as particularly liberal or the hippies. Nobody outside of Ben & Jerry's was a big company that was going out of their way to say things about this part of our culture, but there's been a paradigm shift, and now it's really expected, especially with millennials and Gen Zs and Xers and all the other, I don't know what we're going to do after we go to Zs, but all the other next coming generations, it's expected that brands will have some consciousness around things like this. And especially when you're recruiting younger and younger people, and with the advent of social media and social media being a connection of your brand's personalities, now it's expected that you'll have a voice around things like this and that opinions will matter. And really now we're expecting brands to have some ownership and really start to reflect the opinions of their audiences, as well as their ownership and people who work there. So it's definitely a balance for brands, but there's opportunity to bring all of those voices to the table. Okay, so let's get through a couple of definitions just so that we're all on the same page, because a lot of things are coming up. The other thing I'll add that I should have put on this, I'm sure somebody may have the question, you may be seeing the acronym lately, BIPOC, and that is Black, Indigenous, People of Color. So I wanted to throw that one out there just to make sure everyone's up to speed, because that one is a new one. Lots of acronyms in our new day and age, but the first one is diversity. And diversity is the differences in racial and ethnic, socioeconomic, geographic, academic, professional backgrounds. So that's all the different ways that you can bring diversity to the table. It also can be people with different opinions, backgrounds, that's degrees in social experience, religious beliefs, political beliefs, that's my second time I'll say the word, sexual orientations, heritage, and life experience. So diversity can encompass and should encompass all of those things. Even as a Black woman, I push for diversity as for women to have seats at the table, for Latinx people to have seats at the table, or voices. When I say seats at the table, I'm really talking about opportunity for their voices to be heard, as well as anyone within the LGBTQIA spectrum. That's another long acronym that you may be hearing. And that is, I better write it down so I don't forget any of them. LGBTQIA. Okay, that's lesbian, gay, LGB. Okay, bisexual, intersex, LGBT, transsexual, QIA. Woo! It's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, queer, intersex, and asexual, in case you start to hear that come up. In the questions part of this, if anybody has questions, I'm good at explaining that one. But again, diversity is about making space to talk about these things and feeling comfortable talking about them, whereas I will tell you 2 years ago, people would whisper that question to me. And rightfully so, just as people are unsure of what words to use to describe people. And I'll still every once and again have someone say, Black. And I'm like, yes, I'm Black. Some people use African American. I say Black, no big deal. But it's okay to say those things and kind of have comfort in saying those things, because it also makes space to allow people to be different. Bias. Bias is a prejudice in favor of or against one thing, one person, or group compared to another, often in ways to be considered unfair. What? No, no, you don't need to see my emails. What's it doing? Sorry, everyone. Of course it's going to be recorded. I can't get that out of there. I'll stop having a heart attack.
It's okay. It's not a webinar without technology issues.
Exactly. I don't even use that email. What is happening?
Got a mind of its own.
Move. Get it? Nope, 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 not that one. There we go.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. Bias is one of those things that comes up a lot. I have a slide in it later. We'll talk about it. Everyone has it, so it's okay. It's just like a nose or a rear end. Everyone's got one, and they all smell different. Corporate culture. Corporate culture really refers to the beliefs and behaviors that determine how a company's employees and management interact internally and externally. How you handle outside transactions as well as your interpersonal connections. And then often corporate culture is implied, but I love a corporate culture that is expressed and that is has goals. And then privilege is a right, advantage, or immunity granted or available to a group or particular person. None of these are negative words, so I don't want anybody to feel bad about any of these things. Wait, did somebody say privilege? Yep, I said it. Privilege and corporate responsibility kind of go hand in hand, and really privilege is a word that can feel difficult to digest because there are lots of negative connotations to it out there. For the context of this conversation, let's talk about privilege in the context of owning a business. And let's recognize that while it involves incredible amounts of work, I own 2 businesses and I have 2 kids, so I'm crazy too. But owning a business really is a privilege, and that privilege gives us the opportunity to invoke change by making our businesses more welcoming to the people who we seek to service and our employees. So for the purpose of this, that's how we'll talk about privilege today. And if anybody has any questions beyond that, I got you. We can talk about those. So first things first, everybody has a bias. So this again isn't one of those terrible words. Your bias might be toward curly hair. Your bias might be toward pink lipstick, and you might be mad at me and I might be killing you visually today because I went with orange. I'm sorry. It complements my color background, so that's why I did it. But everybody has a bias, and it's okay to have a bias. What's not okay is to treat people differently because you have biases, especially when it comes to things like within your company. So the idea is really to uncover those biases, because sometimes you simply don't know them and they truly are unconscious biases. So I've got a couple of ways that you can become aware of your biases. One is Harvard University, Lord thank them, they have free implicit bias tests. It's a simple Google search away. You can spend from now until the end of time taking those bias tests and really uncover lots of different biases that you may have. I also have a wonderful exercise that I'm happy to do with you very quickly, called the Trusted 10 exercise. So for anybody that wants to, you can do this now or you can do it later. What I'd love for you to do is to write your name down at the top left-hand side of a piece of paper. And under your name, write down 10 people that you trust. Now, 10 people that you trust can be a difficult sort of task, but think about people that you would lend your car keys to if they needed it, or people that you will give your house keys to, or people that you drop your kids off with no problem. At this point, I'd probably drop my kids off with any of you, but with the understanding that you would return them. But the idea is that you want to come up with 10 people that you trust. And then across the top, write down race, gender, college education or education. Write down, this is the last time I'll say it, political affiliation, sexuality or sexual preference, religion, and all of those things across the top, and socioeconomic status. And as you come back later, start to fill that chart out for all the people that you trust. And what you'll find is that you may be great at diversity in one area. I always have people who start the day in trainings and they go, I've got today handled, no big deal. You know, my sister-in-law is Black. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Or, you know, I was born here, or this or that. Well, what we tend to find is that the circles of people that we trust around us are oftentimes a lot like us in one way or another. So even if you are pretty diverse when it comes to race, you might find that most of the people that you're close to all have the same level of college education, or they might all have the same religious background. You might not have anyone of differing religions that you're close to, or people with different political, okay, I slid it in, political associations that are close to you. So I love that exercise because it's an opportunity to really take a personal inventory of the people around you and how homogenous your groups are. And then you can really start to look at how that affects your view of other people. And you can start to take an inventory of the people you need to pull in. Age is another one. I like to include age there because most of us spend a lot of time with people that are in the same stage of life as we are. Now, of course, we have parents and sometimes we have younger siblings or children, and those give us outliers. But what I find, especially with people my age, is that they don't have friends who are in the age ranges above them. And I find that so much can be learned by the people that have been here before us. And oftentimes relationships that differ from parental relationships will allow you so much to learn. And opening up those circles will really give you a different point of view in the world. And that's what all of this really ultimately is about having access to different points of view. So take a little time and do those. Those Harvard ones, oh man, they'll get you every time. Okay, so diverse in many ways. This is something that we talked about. So diversity can come in so many ways. I work with a lot of companies in the fashion and beauty industry, and I also include here for them size. Just simply having people at the table who give you a different point of view and how people feel. So include all of these things when you're really thinking about diversity. Okay. So now we get into crafting a culture that embraces diversity and equality. First of all, just simply celebrating that diversity exists and simply saying it, being explicit that people are different, that we like that people are different, and that we're looking to celebrate that, both the people that you have now and to hire new diverse people. And then seeking partners who are diverse. Oftentimes that is a part of the circle that's left out. And it's the people that you work with who can help you fill in that hiring part, which we'll talk about a little more. So celebrating diversity. I like to celebrate with food, so that's why I have this picture here. And it's that kind of time of day for me. So one way that you can celebrate diversity is to really embrace your own cultural traditions, create new traditions within your companies, host a meal that includes dishes from an array of cultures, and not necessarily just tasking people with their own culture, but sometimes it is hosting a potluck during Asian History Month and tasking people with different countries and different recipes for everyone to learn a little bit and to share those things. So that's a really fun way to do it. You can create a calendar of cultural holidays. These are these sort of like easy things to do. A little bit more difficult from an HR perspective is to maybe give a calendar of cultural holidays and allow time for floating holidays for people who do celebrate holidays other than the ones that we celebrate culturally as Americans. And then it's doing things like supporting minority organizations locally, celebrating employees of all backgrounds and highlighting them. This is when your social media really comes into play in a really easy way. Is to go ahead and highlight all of those voices. Also, the hardest part for your marketing team, I can tell you, is building content, and they will be so happy that we can look internally for people to celebrate and to highlight as well. And then really welcoming conversations about diversity. One of the ways that I like to suggest that companies do this is to, whenever there are company meetings, taking essentially about 10% of that time to talk about a diversity topic can just simply make space. The other thing is, when the world is so tumultuous as it is now, making time to just check in with people and see if they're okay, and making space for it to be okay to talk about those sorts of things is another really important way to celebrate diversity. So, values in corporate culture. There's lots of things that can be a part of your values in corporate culture. These are some of the things that I like to see when helping companies guide them through the path of creating paradigms and values. So I like to suggest that you come up with a document that includes these things. This is like a mission statement. Post it somewhere, make sure that everyone understands it, and then give people the opportunity to really talk about what these things mean to them. And diversity is a part of a culture, so it's not the only part of it, and it's not the, it can feel particularly inauthentic if suddenly diversity is the only thing we talk about, but we don't address the other things. So I think presenting these things together really helps it be palatable and easily understood. It also gives it purpose along with the other values that make your company tick, and what guides you definitely changes how your employees feel. So diversity goes hand in hand with all of these things, and they all affect each other. So a lot of companies now are really paying attention to being green or more environmentally responsible. It could be consistency. How we speak to each other will be consistent. How we deliver service will be consistent. Our ethics will be particularly high, or we will seek to embrace equality along with diversity, high service standards, and then of course, teamwork. Oh, did I have a question? I thought I heard someone. No. Whitney, feel free to stop me if you have any questions or anything comes up. All right, got the thumbs up. We'll keep rolling. So when you create those values and those paradigms, really then the question is do our decisions and actions support those values? So those guiding principles should come into play when you're looking at things like making decisions and moving forward. So have the tough conversations. This is the first thing that's the hard part, is really sit down and have those conversations. Are we supporting pay equity? Do we have equal opportunities within our company? And really the hard one, I hear about this one everywhere, is cliques. Do we need to break up some of those things? Maybe it's as simple as saying, hey, people at this management level need to start having lunches with people outside of their department, going to lunch with people in other departments, just to create new relationships. I hear a lot of every once and again, companies have a little bit of a boys club, or there's a girl clique, and it's breaking those up and saying, make relationships with new people, go to lunch with someone new, have coffee with someone new. Sometimes being in the uncomfortable place of mandating those things makes it more comfortable to start those actions. And then you can really start to allow people to create relationships and then of course it's creating diversity committees. And then it's really easy for people to work together on things like celebrating cultural holidays and things like that, because they start to really support that culture in all ways. So then consider those values in external decisions, and then don't assume that your employees know the values. They just don't. And then also being explicit about those values when you're looking for partners and finding partners that support those values. You may find that some partners don't support those same values and aren't interested in those things, and that may then open up the space for you to look for partners who are more diverse. So, diversity hiring. Is it even okay to say that you're hiring with the idea of diversity in mind? Well, on the surface, it can feel like you are seeking someone of a particular background to fill a role, which can start to feel like maybe you're offering less opportunity to other groups. It's okay to have all of those feelings that you may have there, but also recognize that diversity hiring is hiring based on merit, one. It's just really taking special care to ensure that the procedures are free from the biases related to a candidate's age, race, gender, religion, all of those things, and really unrelated to the things that won't affect their job performance. I should also say included in that should be physical abilities and people who are differently abled. So it's taking all of that into account and looking for candidates who are very diverse in lots of ways, and then choosing a candidate who's best for the job, not based on those things. Does that feel right? That should feel a lot better. So it's really giving opportunity to be a part of the pool. How are we on time? We're doing good on time. Okay, so how do you find those people? Well, part of it is, and I can promise you, one of the first things that candidates are going to do when they see a post about a job with you is they're going to go to your website. They're going to go to your social media, and they're going to see if anybody that looks like them is represented. So on your website, include your diversity goals in your About Us. Encourage diverse candidates within the post. Simply, diverse candidates are encouraged to apply. That's all. That's a welcoming feeling to know that it matters that we want you there. And oftentimes I can tell you, it may feel like that's unnecessary, but that can greatly change the diversity of prospects that you'll get in, simply them knowing that that matters to a company. Diversify the imagery within your website and within your social media. Now, you've seen 18 slides of mine. It takes a little extra time to find diverse people within the pictures that you go by. It does. But you know what? It means a lot to the people looking to feel like your company is welcoming of those faces. And it will also really greatly improve the feeling both of your consumers and of future applicants. So when pulling from universities, recruit through historically Black colleges. There are not a lot of them in California. There's exactly one. However, you do have access to a lot of Hispanic serving institutions. Also, great for the Northwest is that you also have a large number of universities with a very diverse student population. In the area, you have the University of Hawaii at Helio, Pacific Union College, University of Nevada at Las Vegas, and the University of San Francisco. All are some of the top 10 most diverse student groups. And then use social media and your network. When I was talking about creating more diverse partnerships, reach out to those partners and let them know, hey, you know what? We have a large group of applicants, or we don't have a large group of applicants for this particular job, but I'd love some more diverse applicants. Do you know anyone? We're pretty homogenous in this department, and I'd really love to get some more voices to the table. Utilizing that network and being explicit about it is okay. Absolutely okay. And so on something like social media, it's a really easy way for people to share that. So partnerships. Oh man, that little S scooted over there. So there's the corporate facing partnerships, and that's when you're seeking quotes from partners. Seek quotes from companies who are owned by diverse leadership. If you work with a lot of male construction people, then maybe look for a construction company owned by a female. Give everyone an equal voice. If you look around and realize that a lot of your salespeople in one particular area are homogenous, look for someone that looks a little different. When it comes to customer facing, diversify the partnerships of products that you provide. If you buy from a lot of buyers, look for buyers that have a different diversity of ownership. You'd be amazed to find that the people who are shopping for your products will appreciate that, and then showcase the diversity in that ownership. If you have a spa or if you're selling products in a retail location, having imagery of the owners of the company explaining what they love about it is a really great way for it to not be sort of pushed down your throat that everyone's diverse. You definitely don't want to display like the one Latinx owner and have no owners anywhere else, but showcase all of those owners. And then you can start to see and people start to feel like you are supporting diversity in the ownership of the companies that you work with. And then when it comes to community facing, a lot of times we support the people that we know in the community, and it's really easy to, if you always do a charity partnership with the baseball team because you play baseball and your kids play baseball, well, seek a partnership with a sport that is particularly female-led, and maybe split those dollars in a way that you can then diversify the community groups that you're facing. And whether it's that, or it's looking for something in science, or if it is that you're working with schools, diversify where you're putting those dollars so that you can reach out to new parts of the community. Those kids will appreciate it. And then questions.
That was fantastic, Tari.
Thank you.
That was so great. We'll go ahead and open it to any questions. Feel free to unmute yourself, or it looks like we do have one in the chat. And that is, what is the biggest common opportunity you've identified across the companies you've worked with that could immediately use change?
Honestly, it is the imagery within social media and websites. It is the easiest thing to change. It really is. And it's so simple to diversify the groups of people in the pictures on your website or the pictures on your social media. And I can promise you it makes all the difference in the world. You all are in a location that people are traveling to you. I can tell you that people of diverse backgrounds often are looking for information on whether the places they're traveling are safe for them or welcoming to them. And simply seeing that imagery puts you on the list of their places to go. And it's so incredibly helpful.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We did a full transparency and inventory of our photography on our websites and realized that that was a huge area that we could improve and something that we really need to work on. So, and I think it does make a huge difference. And I think that safety piece is really, really important. And I'm glad that you mentioned that. It makes a lot of sense.
Oh, absolutely. You'd be amazed at how often there are places that aren't safe for people. I can tell you I've chosen not to travel to countries because I've been like, nah, I don't think it's the best idea for me.
Yeah.
Oh, another one. We have a population of fewer than 2% Black residents in Napa County as compared to a much higher number in California and the US. How do we define the standards of success within our company in terms of diversifying? Hi, Amy from Cake Bread. Great question. I would say that you really have to look at all the ways that you can diversify. So if there are only 2% Black residents in Napa, you're gonna have to recognize that you're probably not going to get all of them to work for you. And so then it's recognizing the other ways that you can diversify. It's if you can't have someone who is working for you, it's can you have a voice on your board? Can you have consultants who are who include that voice? Can you have trusted partnerships with someone who includes that voice? But then looking for how you can diversify within other groups of people of color, or how you can diversify within other groups, period. So a lot of times people are definitely forgetting the LGBTQIA groups. It's maybe you are looking to diversify within that, or diversifying within other groups. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And Amy, great question. Something that we think a lot about is being authentic to our community. So how are we looking at that and, incorporating a large Latinx population here in Napa into, our chamber committees or our chamber board and, the work that we're doing. And I think Tari mentioned that earlier, is like really being authentic to, your place and your company, but at the same time being inclusive, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, do you see Carrie's question there?
Oh.
Carrie says, how does a company revise its core values to reflect diversification and recognize persons of color and sexual orientation?
I think it starts with having the tough conversations. I think it's recognizing what those values are, and recognizing too that those values, it's how we treat each other, but also how our customers feel when they are interacting with our brands. And then being explicit in that. So adding diversity to those core values, and then recognizing how you're going to approach diversity. So, and believe me, I know not everybody has an available position right now to fill with someone who is from a diverse background, but we all do have websites that we can diversify the imagery around. We can all have the conversations around diversity and how we're going to treat people of diverse backgrounds. I can tell you I work with a women's wear brand right now, and they have 55 employees. All of them are white women except for one man who is also blonde. And they simply don't have, they're not in a place where they can hire new people right now, but I'm working with them over the next few months, and we're having conversations about how they can be ready for diversity when they have the opportunity. So it's being explicit about those values, being explicit about, for that particular company, it was rewriting their training, their retail training, to really talk about how they're going to ensure that everyone who walks through their door, that particular brand is a luxury brand, and ensuring that their salespeople and service people are giving everyone a luxury experience, whether they think someone can afford the experience or not. So it is, what we did for them was remove the judgment of whether anybody can buy anything in their store. And this is a store where they sell $60 hand soap, to give you a point of reference. And they sell furniture, and they have a $4,500 bed, to give you an idea. So it's a particularly luxury undertaking. I think it's $300 t-shirts. Great for all of you if anyone's hanging out in a $300 t-shirt right now. I am not. But what we did is we took that, the ability to buy, off the table for their customer service people. And what we now talk about is ensuring that everyone who comes in is treated as if they are spending all of the money for that bed within 5 minutes. So everyone should feel like they're having a luxury experience, despite any characteristics that might have a person judge whether they could or cannot shop. And that then evens the playing field for the customer service experience for everyone, because what they found was that people who might be interested in working there, who might have shopped there, had negative experiences and therefore weren't interested in working there. So it's top to bottom, and all of the things really work together. Okay. I see one from Handwritten. I find that the wine industry overall lacks the diversity that reflects its long history and global appeal. What are ways in which we can better create inroads to diverse communities that don't always have cultures that center around wine? I think it is reaching out to groups. So I'll take, for instance, I'll use African Americans or Black people as an example. There are lots of travel groups within the African American community. It's reaching out to those groups and creating partnerships with them and supporting them and having those hand-in-hand relationships. So if you are seeking partnerships with influencers, it's ensuring that you are seeking partnerships with influencers who are of those diverse groups, so that you can also be a part of the education of those groups. So if you're going to have a program where you're reaching out to 5 influencers to test a new product, make sure 2 of them come from diverse backgrounds. And what you'll find is that as somebody who's run a lot of influencer campaigns, how much I love them, we will leave on the side, because they can be a lot to work with. But what you'll find is oftentimes when you're reaching into groups that aren't your primary target, what you end up doing is having a really great response because they are hungry for the information, but also really interested. And you have the opportunity to be disruptive when you're going into a community that is around a different culture, because they're so appreciative that you are interested in speaking to that culture and creating those relationships. So I think it requires you explicitly having that as a part of your goals, and then really choosing to speak to those communities. Eve Khan. What about diversity in language?
Yeah, great question. Stephanie had a question just above handwritten wines that asks, how can we encourage diversity and discussion without calling out our diverse employees and putting the responsibility on them to represent their experience for their entire culture?
Thank you, Stephanie. You're an angel for asking it. So I think it's really important for you to give people the opportunity to ask them to be a part of, but absolutely not putting the responsibility on them. That's why in that beautiful slide with the food and celebrating diversity, I really love the idea of not putting the responsibility of Hispanic History Month on the Hispanic people in your company. If you are going to have a cook-off, then allow them to be the judges. They don't need to cook. They know how to do that. Maybe it's having a cook-off and allowing them to be the judges and inviting them to the table or asking them what they'd like, but not putting the responsibility on them. I can say as a minority in most of the circles I end up in, it can be daunting and honestly just tiring to have to be the voice of your culture all the time. Sometimes it's simply asking them for their input, but not putting the responsibility on them. And then also not starting at their month. So, don't start for Black History Month on January 30th and then turn around to your Black employee and go, we need something tomorrow. What can you do? It's really creating, having that calendar be a part. Now is the time to make those goals and engage them in that conversation, but give them the space to not be involved if they don't want to. And now's the time to start making those decisions and definitely don't put it on them. So thank you, Stephanie, for asking that question. Okay.
Yeah, great question. I think there's another one from Eve. What about diversity in language? We have international travelers come to the Valley.
I want to make sure I'm asking the right thing or answering the right thing. I'm assuming what you mean is utilizing different types or different languages. Is that correct? Do you think so, Whitney? I think it's really important to be available for that. I know there is a large number of travelers that you have from multiple Asian countries. It's also being aware that they are not a homogenous group and making sure that you are speaking the correct language to steer away from making any assumptions. And I think that's the big thing with diversity is it's not making assumptions, it's asking questions versus making assumptions. So if you have the opportunity to use different languages, absolutely, that's a wonderful way to make people feel more welcomed and a really great way to let them know that you care. Okay. There's so many groups of Black. Okay, did I see any other questions? I don't think so. Any other questions?
Anybody else?
This is great.
There's another one from Stephanie.
Okay. How can we broaden the subject with our teams without causing awkwardness? Oh no, take your time. I think it is, I always suggest employee surveys to take a pulse on what is happening in the minds of the groups of people that you work with and the people that work with you. I also think there's lots of people who do this work like I do. I specifically use improv because it softens the conversation because there are so many feelings around this. And I can tell you that almost always when I do trainings like this, there are tears because there's so many feelings locked up for people and so many hurts that have happened. So I think if you can, one, be comfortable understanding that even wanting to have the conversation is a great and amazing first step. So if you can like allow some of the awkwardness to dissipate by just recognizing that we want to talk about this and we want to do better and we want to understand what you're thinking about, and that want takes us leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else, then that's a great place to start. But I would start with that. I would start with a survey, and I would start with open forums where you create paradigms for that group. One of the paradigms I really like is that in this space, we will give an assumption of positive intent about anything that's said. And that gives us space to talk and say, I may get this wrong, but I want to understand and I don't want to offend. And if you can kind of start with that, then hopefully you're on a better road. Okay. How do you approach companies that lean toward comfort versus courage? Really, I think that the numbers rarely lie, and that's why I typically love to start with that employee survey. What you find is that people who hide from difficult conversations, things are happening whether you talk about them or not. And if you think you're comfortable by ignoring them, what really is happening is turmoil for other people, and the people who are having, who don't feel like they can be their full selves, who are the people who are receiving different treatment because of biases that managers or management can have, those people are feeling uncomfortable. So it's better to have those conversations and unlock those differences. Sometimes a mediator may be needed, but what you'll find is you'll keep a lot more people, and people will be much more likely to, we're in a space where, people are having to work hard and grin and bear it. And we've all got to bear down and do that together. It's easier to work hard together if we know that we're in a place that's willing to be courageous for us. And it's easier to stay in a place and be committed to a company that you know is willing to be courageous for you. Yep, awesome.
That was a great question. Really great answer on that. Well, I think we're just about out of time. Does anybody have any last burning question? Yes, no, it doesn't look like it.
This was wonderful.
This was so incredible, Tari. Thank you so much. And Tari's going to be back with us for our next two webinars. And our next one is about how diversity affects my business and how to pivot naturally. And I think that's going to be really important for us here in the Napa Valley. And I also want to take a moment to thank Elizabeth Heacock, our Director of Membership and Sales. This has been her baby, and Tari and her are good friends, and I'm so glad that we were able to do this together. I think it's so wonderful for us to share this information with folks. And then I'd also like to thank our presenting sponsor today, Handwritten Wines. Thank you, Philip, and your incredible support of this webinar and Yountville in general and the Chamber. You've been fantastic. And I think that's it. Tari, I'll leave you with the last word.
Thank you so much to everyone who came out today. I will reiterate that even just taking this time out of your day is a wonderful step. It shows that you care. It shows that you're willing to make diversity a priority for your companies. And if you ever have questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to. And come back for the next one. We'll talk more.
Yeah, come back for the next one, and we'll send out the video recording via email and Tari's contact information and registration links to the next webinar. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and we hope to see you next week, and have a great day. Bye-bye.